Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Carlton People. Now, in this episode, I'm talking to Stephen Raitman. Stephen, you might have been the first person I bumped into at Icon Park when I got back to Australia. I don't know if you know that.
Yeah, quite possibly. That was a while ago now.
It was. And it's good to have you here. And I'm really excited to get your story because you've got a wealth of Carlton experience, I would say.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. Thanks for having me. Nice and easy.
So, where does it begin for you? How do you become a Carlton supporter?
How do I become a Carlton supporter? Well, let's just say that my membership, the number of years of my membership is one more than my actual date of birth. So therefore, my father signed me up very early. So it goes all the way back to there. The first games I can remember going to, seriously, 71, 72 as a 5-year-old. And I can remember the first, I don't, I can't quite recall the 72 grand final. I can recall the 73 and 74 grand finals.
What do you recall about the 73 grand final?
Not a lot. What do I recall? I actually do recall the fact that the old Southern Stand had those columns, posts, call them what you will, holding the roof up. And we were sitting behind one of them and having to move. And that was the day. You sat and you had to look around the pole. And that's what I remember of it. I remember family not being impressed at the end of the day, but that was that. As
You
a
had to.
6-year-old, once your team starts losing a grand final, you burst into tears and decide what's next.
So, what happens after 73? What do you recall about the rest of the 70s?
Oh, the rest of the 70s, going to school as a Carlton supporter is the main thing you remember. And we didn't lose. And if we did lose, it was generally in finals. So you had a wonderful year, and then you get up to finals, and some years were much better than others. I mean, I've still got, and you'd know Daniel. Daniel still talks about the fact that they're all talking about these dynasty clubs between 72 and 82. We just should have gone straight through. And we almost did most years.
I've only experienced a really, I guess this year and maybe 2011 that I can recall as good regular seasons, even though
Yeah,
I think 23 is
yeah,
probably the one that really counts.
absolutely. Well, that was every year. You'd get up, you'd go to the game, you'd expect to win, you'd come home. It'd be wash, dried, repeat. The funny part about those things were in those days, the Herald, as it was, would bring out a Saturday afternoon paper and that would be delivered at quarter time to your house. And generally, so it had the end of the first quarter scores in red down the side column. And if Carlton had a bad start, you'd have this whole, oh my God, the Blues have had a bad start, rah, 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 rah. Knowing full well you wouldn't waste your time reading it because they'd got up one and that was the end of that. And
You
then
were
you'd go home
spoiled.
and watch the replay. Oh, we were. Absolutely. And that's what a lot of the podcasts have talked about this year. The fact that what's happening now, what happened this year, was something my kids haven't ever seen, but something I grew up with.
Yeah.
And that's just the amazing part about it. That's why this year was such a thing.
What
It
would
was
you
a
say?
wave.
Yeah, I was going to say, what would you say was I mean, you've seen a lot of football. What was different about what happened this year compared to seasons past in this generation?
I still have no idea what happened at quarter time that Gold Coast game. We were horrible. And every podcast, and you go through and you listen to all of them, and we were horrible. And even that day, we were horrible. And Gold Coast were giving it to us. Quarter time, somebody said something, somebody decided something was going to happen, flicked a switch, and over we went. And that's just what happened. Now, to go back to flicking a switch, very late 70s, early 80s, there was that same sort of switch that got flicked most weeks, especially at Carlton. You know, you'd go in at half time, you'd be down, everybody would meet in the set at the stairs or outside at half time, have a chat, go back inside, and Mosquito Fleet would turn it on. We'd kick 10, we'd be in front, and that would be the end of the game. And the fourth quarter would play itself out, and there you go. But that switch that got flicked, that game.
Was there, through your time growing up in the 70s, 80s, etc., was there never a down patch? Was there never a rebuild? Like, what was it like coming back up?
The worst thing that happened in that whole down period, in that whole period you're asking about, not the down period, was going out in straight sets in 1980. And if you read Percy's book, that was because we didn't have a coach. We had Perce. We won the flag in 79, won the flag in 81 and 82. And in 80, we got beaten badly in the two finals we played.
Yeah, right.
That was the terrible thing, because we finished on top, I think, in 80, or near enough to top on it in 80.
It's just such a fascinating.
And Collingwood beat us.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. Because let me tell you, I mean, that's that wonderful T-shirt. I was there when we were shit. And boy, have I sat through it.
Yeah.
I mean, you still don't, for those of us my age, you look at that whole disaster, 2002, 2003, 2000, you still had names on the list. But they couldn't do it anymore. You go back to the worst period before then, and when I say the worst period, it really wasn't that bad. 97, we won the flag, and rather than cutting a few guys that were past it, we kept them on. And so we still had the blokes there, but they were older and they were not as hungry. I think the burning desire, they won the flag in 95, and that was that. And you had other sides that were hungrier. And it's that hunger that keeps it. You've got to have skill as well. And let's be honest, between 2000 and 2010, I'm not sure how much skill we had.
What do you remember about that whole period? I've heard stories around how the AFL made the announcement stripping the draft picks on a Friday afternoon. Draft was on a Monday, I think it was. Like, what do you remember about the punishment and the whole period?
Oh, we all turned up. What do I remember? I remember giving a whole lot of cash on the Sunday. We all turned up at Carlton on the Sunday. Dull was there. Ian Collins had organised a whole lot of old players just to be at the ground. They threw the doors open. They had, it's my club, it's personal. That was the thing. And they threw the doors open, and it was come and do and be and donate and whatever. And that was it.
Wow.
It was really bad. I mean, look, we're talking about, and the interesting thing of those times, we've seen it before. I mean, if you're my age, you've seen it before. I mean, I can remember the Richmond Save Our Skins thing of, I think it was 1990. Rex Hunt and a few others organised for the Carlton 79 to 81 side with a few guys from older to play against Richmond, same era, but it was played out at Essendon. And on a Sunday, Rex Hunt called the game, which was terrific. And it was terrific. It was just a family-friendly, turn up, throw your money in a jar sort of experience. So we'd seen it then. So, yeah, I mean, those things, that sort of stuff, I mean, that's where, yeah, football's become more of a business and more of everything else. But at the end of the day, for you, me, for the fans, for all of us that are watching podcasts like this, it's personal. It's the club. It's why you follow a team. You follow a team to watch them, to watch their success, and you're shitty when they fail.
Why do you think, like, I've asked this question recently a lot, what's the essence of Carlton, and why do you think people care for Carlton the way they do? What is it?
It was really well explained by a couple of boys recently. The non-Carlton people care almost as much about Carlton as we do. That's what's important, because we did win everything. We were that good. They aren't. The Tricoloured Club from down Linton Street. Not to technically tell them what they are, but they're the Tricoloured team down from Linton Street. They wish they were that good, and that's it. And it's so what makes us great? The fact that we turned up, we won, we were successful, we bred success. You know, you got Menzies sitting in a car watching a game. You've got the players going to the lodge after the flags of 81 and 82. That sort of, you know, Elliot, when he was flying, could have been Prime Minister, was King of the World. He was Carlton. And at that stage, you know, you go back to looking at Gene Simmons, whenever somebody toured, the Carlton jump was thrown into their hands and they were ABBA. You'll see the photos of them. Everybody was Carlton. Carlton were the thing. Collingwood would like to think they're the number one club around the world. It wasn't in those days. And it was wonderful. It was great. Being a Carlton supporter was just wonderful. It was a feeling. And it was family and it was home. And that's one of the things that's changed.
You don't feel that same family feel?
Do I feel it as a family? Yeah, you do. As a family, you do. But what you don't feel and what you miss and what you guys, and I say you guys being the younger generation, you played at Carlton, you had your seats were annual. You sat in the same seats every year over and over and over and over and over. Come August, you'd wish the people sitting next to you a Merry Christmas and we'll see you in 12 months. And you did. And you saw them 8 months later, first game. And you'd sit and you'd watch. You know, the funny thing, there's a guy that still comes to the AGM who he and his brother-in-law used to sit in front of me every time Carlton were having a shot at goal. They'd bet 5 cents with each other on would he kick it, would he miss it. And of course, you'd watch these 5-cent coins being swapped from hand to hand each week. And that was it. You know, sitting in the Hawthorn stand, not only could I tell you where I sat in the Hawthorn stand, I could tell you who else sat in the Hawthorn stand, people I went to school with. Let's be honest, half my school went and sat in the Hawthorn stand. And you knew everybody that was sitting there and everybody that was around and those sorts of things.
Yeah, right.
It was nice. You know, I mean, look, we talk about playing at Carlton. The Heatley stand was referred to colloquially as home. And you know, you kicked home in the fourth quarter. And as soon as you were kicking home in the fourth quarter, everything was going to be good and the stand were going to erupt, and that was great.
What would you say? What would you say? I mean, you've got a lot of memories. What are your favorites as a supporter?
Interesting. You say favourite memories. The three things that come to mind. The three things that come to mind are not anti-Carlton, but against Carlton. The Blight goal, Kappa kicking that, and Jezza being knocked out by Magro. And I know where I was sitting. I was almost sitting in the same spot for all three occurrences. But yeah, they're the three things. I mean, the other things that you remember, the Cooter Day at Carlton versus West Coast, where he took them on by himself. Those sorts of things. The experiences and that sort of stuff.
What was the Jesus situation? I don't think anyone's come here and talked about that.
Magro lined him up. He was, I can't remember if he was captain, coach at that stage, but Magro lined him up and took him out. It's on YouTube. You'll see it. In these days, Magro would never have played again. As it was, the umpire called play on and let's keep going.
So what was the crowd reaction like? Because I'm the last incident I remember hearing about was the Silvani one with Melbourne.
The Silvani one. Okay. But see, the Silvani and Melbourne one, that was disgraceful. But Melbourne wound them up by walking up to the interchange bench and then clapping.
True.
Like you're a dill. You're at Carlton, you're doing that sort of thing and you want to leave the ground. And you've knocked over the number one son. Let's be honest. That's not the sensible thing to do. The crowd were irate, but understand in those days crowds weren't like crowds are now. Membership in those days was nothing. If you'll remember, that was great. There were 18,000, 10,000, 11,000 was huge as a membership. You'd fill the ground with 20 or 30,000 most weeks, but that was it. Now, and so it's built on from there. So I can remember the crowd. The crowd were irate. The crowd were yelling. I can remember my uncle talking about the fact that would fire us up. What Magro did would fire us up and would make us come out, and we did. We came out and beat them up, but that was it. I remember the day Robbie Muir went nuts at Carlton, and if you look at it now, it's not completely his fault. But to sit there as a kid and watch this bloke go off his tree, you just don't understand why and what and how and all of that.
Yeah, right. What about the way? I mean, you just mentioned something really interesting there, which a lot of the audience will pick up on. And when you referred to the newspaper, every day you would get scores up until quarter time. So when you look at the times then for footy as content compared to now, where everything's on demand at any moment, you can find out what's happening, whether it be through mainstream media or independent media. Like, what's that like for you?
I laugh, and I laugh only because in those days you'd go to bed on Thursday night, you'd have a transistor radio, and you'd either stick it under your pillow or you'd stick it if you weren't allowed to have the radio on, or you'd stick it next to your bed, and you'd listen to 3DB or 3UZ, which had the trots on, and you weren't interested in the trots at all. But interspersed between the trots, they would get the lineups for the Saturday games. So you would get the lineups that way on the radio at that time if you were a kid. Otherwise, you had to sit up and wait for Bob, Jack and Lou on league teams. And that was the way you got it.
Wow.
And then or it was in the paper the next day. And then Good Friday, there was never remember in those days, the days I'm talking about, there were 6 games. They were all on a Saturday. And Good Friday comes the Channel 7 Good Friday appeal. You didn't get the teams because there were no papers because it was Good Friday. So you were waiting for Lou Richards to interview somebody at the hospital or in the call centre from your team who would tell them what your team was for the tomorrow.
That's fascinating. That is fascinating to me.
When you consider that now you get on the social medias like, sorry, are we going to call it Twitter or X or whatever we're going to call it? 10 minutes before, all day Thursday, you can find out who's in, who's out, late mail, new mail, this, that, and the other. You've got it 24 hours a day, 7 days a week if you want. In those days, it was nothing.
Yeah. Yet the appetite for it hasn't changed. If not, it's probably been serviced because I think. Yeah.
Well, our appetite wasn't as great because we didn't have the access.
Right.
So we knew to wait till Thursday or Friday. You'd look in the paper and then you'd go to the game on the Saturday. And then there would be a lull till the next Thursday. Now it's, except for World of Sport on the Sunday. And that was a special thing.
Yeah.
Watching 3 hours of stuff. So you saw your coach come in and talk.
Now you've got
and the panel
20 plus Carlton podcasts on its own. We've got our own ecosystem of content.
Yes,
which
I know.
I don't clubs have.
No. I mean, look, the stuff that you guys do is amazing. Look, and as of some of the stuff I agree with, some of it I don't. I've challenged a couple of them online several times. And of course, the wonderful boys from the Prendercast who keep referring to me as their first ever listener because I was driving a bus and I was driving a group of kids to a school camp.
I still remember a time where it was the Prendercast, the Carlton Show, Heath Buck, and Carlton Live. And that was it. That's all we had.
Absolutely. Yep, that's right.
No, it's come a long way in a short amount of time. Let's talk about the team, the current group. Who do they remind you of? What do they remind you of?
They remind me they're a young group. Do I want to say you'd like them to be? I'd like them to be the 79 to 81 group because they've got that, but I don't think they've got that shit in them because I don't think you're allowed that anymore. So I don't think you're allowed the personality and all of that sort of nonsense. Mm-hmm. But they seem to have the drive. So you'd like that to be because the 87 one was a lovely flag. Let's call it. It's the only grand final that didn't have an opening bounce.
What happened?
I think it was free kick in the centre.
A free kick to start the grand final.
It was either 87 or 82. Jono walked up and explained they had 5 in the middle. Umpire gave him the ball, and that was the end. That was the beginning.
There you go. I learned something. I learned a few things today.
That was an interesting. But so, and of course the 95 one, that was the old stages deciding we were going to give it one last hurrah.
Yeah.
And they did.
Yeah.
So that's why you're looking at this young group now and thinking that's the time.
So that's 79 period through to say 80, 82. Were these, the generational talents that we had in their prime, early prime? Were they a bit young or were they
early prime? 79 they were early prime. 81 and 82 they were fairly mature.
Gotcha.
And then by 87 most of them had gone.
Right. Yeah, because it feels like with this group in particular, we've just opened the door into whatever the best of them will be for the next 5 or so years.
That's why I'm saying it. That's that sort of thing.
Okay.
Because that's how it feels. That's how it felt. Even that Brisbane final, come out of the blocks, go hard, and then you know what? Brisbane caught us. Good luck to them. They're a better side. They're a more experienced side. They're that sort of thing. We've had a taste. We've shown them we can. We go back, rebuild, reset, and charge.
Yep.
You'd
Yeah,
like
right.
to think that. You really would.
What are your expectations of season 2024? How do you view the upcoming season?
We're talking about starting at round 0, starting at round 1.
Yeah, well,
and don't ask me on how round 1 is the week after round 1, because that doesn't make any sense to me anyway. I would expect us to come out, see what, whilst it's lovely that we finished 4th or 3rd or wherever we finished, that preliminary final week, you'd like us to be legitimately there. We weren't legitimately a 3rd or 4th side during the season. We made it. Then we showed everybody what we could do. But you'd like to be legitimately there, which means you've got to win, 14, 15, 16.
Yeah.
I'm sounding a bit like Mr. Walls, aren't I?
Well, a top 4 finish would be, correct. I mean, I've been harping on about just get to a prelim at the MCG and you give yourself the best chance,
Absolutely. That's the ultimate. That's the prize. They seem to have the talent. They seem to have improved a little bit. They've had to let go some guys. That's just the nature of the beast now.
Yeah. Yeah, right. Yeah. Final question. When do you think this group will next lift up a cup? The cup?
Next year, don't I? That's the one. Got to do it. Got to do it for the kids. Got to do it for my kids. Let's be honest, my kids and that my kids aren't kids anymore. But you see, they've missed. I mean, you look at the Richmond kids. The Richmond kids that were where we were, and Richmond were as good as we were going back all those years, and they fell in a hole. So you've got to do it now. Strike now. Hit it now. 2024, 2025. Doesn't have to be a dynasty. Look at Melbourne, win 1. Nobody'd give it back.
Yeah. No.
They couldn't even go to it.
Yeah. Well, one guy did. He's
that's right.
He hasn't come back since.
That's it, yeah. But seriously, that's the thing. You keep it at that level. Do it now.
Exciting.
Absolutely.
Mate, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for doing this with me.
Been a bit of fun.
It's been great to have connected with you a few years back, and I look forward to watching a much better version of the club for many years.
We can always hope. Should be.
Absolutely.
Alrighty.
Good on you, mate.
Thank
Go
you.
Blues.
Go Blues. Catch you soon.